Gaming has a way of bringing out the best, but also the worst in many people. And we all know a competitive title can take this to another level. Do you like shooters? Well, play CSGO competitively and you sure won't anymore. Love top-down arena games? Give yourself a game of online Dota 2 and that joy's heading out the window. And it is no different in first-person slashers. The original Chivalry came out from a Half-Life 2 mod, made to simulate first-person medieval warfare, which eventually became its own game in Chivalry Medieval Warfare in 2012. Because of this massive success, of course, there was bound to be a follow-up, and thus in 2021, Chivalry 2 was released. But it wasn't like the rest. It never followed the footsteps of a Mordhau or even the first in its franchise. Whilst many look at the title and think, it's cool, but it's more of the same, right? Well, no, not quite, because Chivalry 2 finally made casual gaming cool again. To help you understand what I mean, I think we need to take a look at the complete opposite of what Torn Banner's sequel decided to do. You see, in 2012, Chivalry Medieval Warfare had a massive release, off the back of Mount & Blade helping the medieval genre reach new heights. With YouTubers like the Yogscast and Total Biscuit promoting Chivalry, Torn Banner's full release was massive. It started off as this large-scale first-person medieval slasher, a new combat system that no one had ever really seen before. Swords felt heavy, maces felt cumbersome, and archery was nearly impossible on your first try. Yet all of this was intentional, making a unique way to approach sword fighting in games. Blocking had to be timed to perfection. There was no holding parries like Mount & Blade before it, so reading your opponent's move was vital, and falling for simple feints was incredibly frustrating yet commonplace. Though as time passed, as all games do, the player base started to drop off somewhat. Not at any accelerated speed, yet with multiplayer-only games, unless there's a AAA studio with AAA budgets behind the title, keeping players on with an endless supply of content, it is always going to happen. So numbers slowly started to drop. However, this wasn't the core player base. It was the outer circle, the casual players that hopped onto popular titles for 5 to 10 hours and then moved on to the next game. So as more and more of these casual players dropped off, it became clearer and more apparent that Chivalry's player base were to become more and more competitive, way more hardcore, and it had some massive effects on the title itself. Not only was the player base smaller now, but it was kept small. Any casual players that wanted to hop back onto the game, or even new players, were just cut down with no remorse by Chivalry veterans and spin-to-win players. Of course, those new players are subsequently put off from ever coming back to the title. I mean, is that a bad thing? For new players? Yeah, but not really for the core player base. Chivalry's combat was designed in such a way to attract this kind of hardcore gamer, so you can't blame the competitive players for getting competitive in a pretty competitive game. But for longevity, it kind of hurt Chivalry's player base. Then, fast forward to 2019 with the release of Mordhau, a similar first-person sword-based slasher, and we saw almost the exact same thing. It started off massive, even bigger than the first Chivalry, improving on pretty much every aspect of the title, yet because it was so similar, a pattern started to emerge. After the large casual player base dropped off, more and more of the hardcore competitive players started to come back out of the woodwork and hold servers at a ransom to their superior fighting skills. Triturion, the developers, actually encouraged this competitive play by adding in competitive group fighting modes and hardcore dueling servers. Was that their intention? Who knows? They could have actually been trying to separate those hardcore players from the main casual audience by giving them their own specialized servers and game modes, but it didn't seem to work that way. It just encouraged more and more competitive play within Mordhau. Once again, this isn't a bad thing, but it is also a fact that this competitive style stunted the growth of Mordhau by raising the floor to entry tenfold. So, we've seen this happen now in 2 games, Chivalry Medieval Warfare and Mordhau. Both games had mechanics that encouraged competitive play. Fantastic titles in their own right and great for leveling up and showing your skills on the battlefield. I think Chivalry's developer Torn Banner saw the effect this had at stunting player base growth and went back to the drawing board. How could they make a sequel to Chivalry, keep its best aspects, but make a more open and accessible game to a wider audience, not alienating a massive portion of medieval lovers? So this is what they did. As Chivalry 2 came along, first, they wanted to alter the combat. This was the main thing that needed changing. Away with that one-time block system. Now, you can hold blocks, making it much easier to stay alive. Of course, there was still an element of timing with the stamina system, so blocking infinitely wasn't possible, yet much kinder to newer players. They kept in chambering and feinting, but with the holding block system, inexperienced players now had an actual counter to feint spammers. Yet, on the contrary, experienced players had to find new and inventive ways to get around the new blocking system. What's more, every weapon in the game could be thrown, making an easy projectile out of anything from a spear to a sword, even a two-handed axe. Items were readily available to be picked up anywhere on the ground. Barrels could stun enemies, fish could be slapped into unsuspecting faces, and players could even get drunk to impede your own fighting abilities. You gotta be a bit dumb to do that. I don't know who would ever do that. Furthermore, the game now went up to 64 players. Not only did this make the game feel way more immersive, but more players and a new addition of bots running around the battlefield meant new players would always find someone or something that they could kill, giving that extra sense of achievement even at lower skill levels. All this may sound stupid to hardcore Chivalry and Mordhau fans, but I think this was always Torn Banner's intention, to make Chivalry 2 a much more casual title, to really focus on the fun, hectic medieval combat rather than who can be the best at spinning in a circle. But did it work? That's the real question. Well, Chivalry 2 is an Epic Store exclusive, so no one actually knows if it kept players off. I know, this is a terrible conclusion. After all that, no one actually knows the player count, so I can't even test my hypothesis. But I think the main point still stands. Torn Banner saw the outcome of Chivalry 1. They saw what happened to Mordhau's player base and decided to take a different approach to the way they developed their newest title, catering towards a wider audience more than the two aforementioned games ever did. Neither of these approaches are right or better than each other. It's just a matter of preference. I know there are many people out there that love Mordhau's combat. They love getting in and proving that they are the best fighter. Yet Chivalry 2's mechanics bring in way more possibilities for inexperienced players, and therefore the praise is rampant, with people happy that there's finally a medieval slasher that actually focuses on the core of fun rather than just pure competitive gameplay. Torn Banner even seem happy with the way that Chivalry 2's going at the moment. They promised to increase the game size by double for free, which is a big promise, but it looks as if they're sticking to that so far. So what do you think? What approach do you prefer? Mordhau's slick, smooth, and difficult to master sword fighting, or Chivalry 2's fun, insane, downright sadistic direction to killing your foes in any way you see fit? Leave a comment down below. Yeah, either way, it has to be said that Chivalry 2 still changed medieval games forever.